We continue with our series of press briefings. We'll talk to expert, the parliament member of Ukraine, members about Eurointegrational hindrances in parliament. We'll talk to Oleg Rybachuk, former vice prime minister on European integration, and now a member of NGO Center UA. Liubov Akulenko, coordinator of information campaign, We're Stronger Together, and Kseniya Liapina, the parliament member of Ukraine. Please. Dear journalists, with your permission, I will begin with my introduction, and I will say the following. We want economic part of association agreement to work in Ukraine. We must get used to two important words, phytosanitary and technical barriers, because whatever doors are open into European market, if we don't overcome these barriers, if we don't follow European standards, our goods will never get to European market. So let's talk about industrial goods and technical barriers. I'll give the floor to Kseniya Liapina, who used to work in the parliament to register important law on technical regulation. It was registered a long time ago, but its history is not successful, and it's important for business. Let her explain the situation. Dear colleagues, as you know, today European Union has removed the technical barriers, economic barriers for Ukrainian goods, but technical barriers remain, and today our producers cannot bring their goods into European market because Ukrainian legislation was not changed to remove technical barriers in control for safety of products. Two basic laws were introduced, and we were trying to get them passed for 15 years, and there was here serious objection. But after revolution in April, first reformation steps were made, and we have introduced the law on standardization and metrological activity, two basic laws, but unfortunately they would hardly help our producers to go into European markets without third law on technical regulation and conformity assessment. If first two laws were approved by the government through Ministry of Economy and working groups and experts, and I participated in passing those draft laws, and we were able to pass them through Parliament fast. The last law also needs to be approved, and without it we cannot use the doors open into European Union, the law on technical regulation and conformity assessment. This history was quite sad. Ministry of Economy started leading this debate, and we were able to reach a certain agreement. The government supported it. We introduced business, expert, and community, and we were able to find certain compromise, but there was a great opposition to the law in the parliament. First and two draft laws have gone through committee. That was created for Regional Varapayev, the Industrial Policy Committee. In all previous parliaments, these regulatory issues were discussed in General Committee, and technical barriers and regulations were discussed there. Everything that related to the quality and safety of non-food stuff products. And in order to separate these two things, to separate these regulatory issue, very artificially, the parliament with majority of regionals has created this specific committee on industrial policy and investment policy, and nobody could explain it, how this committee on industrial policy could not handle those issues. This is natural, but this artificial committee remains the barrier to many projects, not just issues related to technical regulation or technical barriers, but also investment policy questions. So many important projects to reform corporate management in Ukraine, and other draft laws were destroyed in that committee, and this project could have been destroyed there as well, but we were able to register it with regulatory policy and entrepreneurship committee. We hope Alexander Kuzel and other progressive members of the committee will bring it for discussion and put it on agenda of the parliament. But there is another barrier: the old industrialists who do not want to see Ukraine as a European country and do not want to see its production harmonized with European production. So we are gathered here to, first of all, to speak through the members of Parliament, to invite the Parliament today to make this last step to approve this draft law, because this is the debt still to be paid by current Parliament, and without which we would not be able to implement European integration plans that we have for Ukraine. Thank you, Ms. Kseniya. So it looks like this draft law was not leaving the committee on purpose, and now the changes to approve it are quite small. I will invite Mr. Rybachuk to say why are they afraid of European standards? Why do they not want to reform it? Good afternoon. I already spoke at this platform to say that we don't need to invent our own bicycle, but we need to follow successful countries to create one coordinating agency in Ukraine that would follow through these processes. This agency was announced, but we have Bureau on Illustration and anti-corruption structures that were not filled with meaning other than in their name. And for me, this is a very important statement that system does not allow us. It's hard to implement the motto of revolution. We don't want to change faces in system. We want to change the system. The two important laws are passed for what Ukraine government is talking about, what we are proud about, and when we were discussing things, why are we signing European Association Agreement, but why we delay its implementation. There is a huge problem. We have a new government that has a president who understands what communication is, and they have good press secretary and good deputy administration leader. But we have problems with Europeans in communication. I hear those complain from European Union very often. We see that situation reminds old Soviet joke when a citizen comes to their leader and says, "Excuse me, do I have a right?" "Yes, you have a right." "Thank you." "May I?" "No, you can't." Ukrainian business was told that we have a right to go to European market. Yes, but we don't have ability. We have right, we have no ability. These technical barriers demonstrate Ukraine government in bad light in Ukrainian producers' eyes and European partners' eyes, because it's hard to understand why Ukraine does not have a competent authority to explain things properly, not when it's only 1 week to the end of the parliament cadence. Just imagine how many draft laws are to be approved in last week. And if this technical law is not approved by the last session of the parliament, then Ukrainian industrial producers will lose practically a year. They will lose technical ability to be sold at European market. We can accuse many things. We know how this law was blocked, and our president says that implementation of the law for him is not just a matter. And our prime minister says that from moment one, our Ukrainian government will be independent and will fulfill the association agreement minute by minute. But 1 year will be lost for our producers of industrial goods, and similar problems will come to agriculture business. Ukraine declared its European dedication for so many years, and there are many Ukrainian politicians to support Euro integration, but now we can look like fools because um, we need to have these issues under control of the president, who used to be Minister of Foreign Affairs. But we have nothing to do as to have such press conferences as often as possible and to inform society what takes our perspectives away. And I hope today's press conference will focus attention of decision makers to analyze of what has happened so that similar things would not happen again. It's very important that our European Agency for Integration would not be just for show, would not be hidden somewhere in the cabinet of ministers, but this independent agency should have opportunity to influence the work of the parliament and the logic of decision making at the cabinet of ministers, and it should really work with public, so then we'll have real European direction to fulfill the agreement that was fought for so heavily. It was the promise of presidential campaign. Ratification was so difficult, and now we have problems from very beginning. Let me call the name of the person who blocked everything, Yuri Voropayev from the Party of Regions. And now give the floor to Denis Tkachenko, representative of American Chamber of Commerce in Ukraine. Why? Because we always have a business that will die from those standards, but there are companies who are ready to work according to these standards. And American Chamber of Commerce fought for the law as well. Let us hear from them. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Of course, Kseniya is absolutely correct about how the difficulties were developing in the parliament on this law. And yes, absolutely, non-tariff barriers are still facing our importer and exporters. As we studied the draft law, we see that it is very positive signal to Ukrainian business for export-import operation and for our national policies within the country. Talking about business, we have four draft laws that regulate assessment, conformity assessment. First, Ukrainian law on conformity assessment, and the decrees of the Cabinet of Ministers of 1993. And these three documents are not efficient mechanism of regulation, and this causes contradiction between those draft laws, and they step on each other's capacities, and this legislative collision hurts exporters and importers because they don't know the game rules. So American Chamber of Commerce, its importers and exporters, supports the Parliament to unify the norms of these three pieces of legislation into united law that would allow to understand the rules of the game. If we talk about exporters, it's important to say that there are non-tariff barriers. Yes, we signed association agreement with EU, and the norms of the free trade area would be enacted 1 year later, and because of this law, our companies would not be able to sell at the market because we need to receive technical regulation and certificate of conformity. This is a simple document that has information about the product and also information about conditions for transportation, preservation, and use. And if our laws do not conform with European legislation, that will not be able to export. Also, conformity assessment by the government is delayed. We have certificate of conformity and quality created by European producer, and now we'll have to do the same certification in Ukraine because it increases, and that way it increases the cost and the delay for Ukrainian buyers. National producers will also win because they will be able to move from Soviet standards to more progressive international European norms that are applied all over Europe. So business hopes that Parliament members and community and everyone who is concerned will find power and will to put this draft law on agenda and to make all obligatory norms and obligations that we took upon ourselves as we signed and ratified association agreement with the EU. To conclude, I'd like to say one interesting phrase. There are some positive things in the law. We're not here just to criticize. The positive things are that our standards would be voluntary in 1 year, so the government will not require the form and color and thickness of the product. It's hard to do business in these conditions. The standards in European Union are voluntary, but technical regulations are obligatory standards. Why? Because there is a list of goods in industry that threaten life and health of people. Lifts, toys, high voltage equipment, medical equipment, high pressure vessels, and they asked us that all these products would follow European standards for them to have high safety level. You know that Otis lifts have special brakes. You will not fall down in the lift. Soviet elevators do not have that. Let us not wait for 1 year. We have safe toys and other goods. I want this to happen on the 14th of October as citizen of this country. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, colleagues. We have some questions. Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Have a question to all of you. You're fighting for Eurointegration all your lives, and you had experience, Mr. Rybachuk, as Vice Prime Minister. More global question: how Euro integration processes are possible with oligarchs in Ukraine? How can we have oligarchs, and how can we integrate into Europe? I'm far from technical regulation. I asked this question to Ukrainian oligarchs, not now, but several years after Orange Revolution. My question was following. Listen, you have already have taken enough of everything. You have property. You need to be interested to make sure we have European rules of game. One government comes, the other leaves, and you're not sure that next government will allow you to preserve your property. So you need to be best Euro integrators, because you need country with property protection, best courts. It's not for us to convince you. You are the biggest Ukrainian business. You need to be locomotive here. And nobody of them would object. But then I came to conclusion that Ukrainian oligarchs are like Ukrainian alcoholics that are ready to start new life next Monday. Ukrainian oligarchs are able to corrupt Ukrainian politicians to support a political force and overnight to take over state property in several sense. It's similar to hard work for 10 years in Europe and have less profit. So this desire or temptation of Ukrainian oligarchs to make fast decisions and to receive super dividends in non-European conditions, in the conditions of of corrupt courts and unreformed judiciary, while supporting just a single politician. This is a barrier for them. It is hard to fight this barrier. We need to relieve Ukraine of oligarchs. We need to see, after new elections in the parliament, political forces that are not connected to oligarch capital directly. We need to change legislation, because signing association agreement makes this honor issue for President Poroshenko, obligation for new parliament, new government. But I feel that this window of opportunity will be limited. We need to make sure that this new parliament for next few weeks until they are privatized by oligarchs. You know, you get into parliament, you can get without oligarchs, but then they are willing to buy you. So we need to make sure that these significant changes happen during the first session of the parliament, new parliament, and that's how we can change rules of the game. From expert and professional opinion, not just from political analysis, I'd like to say what kind of direction we are lacking in our reforms and what we must do as soon as possible. Demonopolization. It's not just getting rid of oligarchs, but we need to be professional, not just from the standpoint of the name of an oligarch, but to make sure that private monopolies are removed because they're great evil. Yes, they're natural monopolies, but they need to be either in the ownership of the nation, controlled and regulated, or if we allow some private monopolies, we need to think about their division and demonopolization as it happens at the communication market, or it should happen at energy market. Unfortunately, during time of Yanukovych, there are many private monopolies appeared. That was a reverse process, and this is a heritage that will hinder us on the way to European Union. Tariffs are not natural for Europe. Energy cost, every cent from electricity goes to Akhmetov. And we are asking the question, are those criminals in the East financed by our pennies from electricity tariffs? It was created artificially, and we must work with Europeans to create the new strategy, not of communist principle, take everything and then divide, but demonopolization that works in U.S., in EU, like Siemens was divided, forced divided, because at some point they have grown up to be mega monopoly, like Microsoft was divided. It's not a question of moral assessment whether it's good or bad, but it's a question of professional expert approach to develop correct policy of demonopolization. It's another comment. Our press conference is to show how oligarchs work. Yuri Voropayev is a lawyer from SKM, so we know who hinders the process of moving into Europe. Yuri Kosuk from Nasha Ryaba in food processing industry. He was fighting for 5 years to enter European market. Those people understand that European standards are key to the markets of the world, and they invest into upgrade. We have a question from the back of the room. Please introduce yourself. Tatiana Bohonko, First Business Channel. My question would be to all speakers. Over the last 8 months, export into European Union was grown, but with new standards, how much growth to European Union export we can expect? Let me comment. We expect that approving this law would be a step number one. After that, 3,000 European standards that have obligatory safety and quality requirements must be implemented in life. So I believe it will take certain time, maybe a year at least, if we are able to force certain agency that would be responsible for the implementation and to mobilize the markets, because technical regulations must be approved by the market as well. What's happening today? A new legislation is passed through the ministry, and nobody knows whether it's approved or not by the market. But European standards say that this procedure should be passed together with the market for the new regulation, and more than 3,000 technical regulations should be approved by the market as well as government to legalize safety standards. Now, what is ready today? I think 5% improvement could be expected immediately, because our producers were not just sitting in trenches hoping that Russia would be kind and the European Union is impossible. Only certain Lundiks told us that that was the case. But when Russia started first trade war against Ukraine in 2013, when they closed the border, we have gathered associations of producers in our committee, and we heard them out. Food processing industry said we are already prepared. Oil, sunflower oil and grain are already at European market, while the milk industry said, give us the safety standards and we'll be ready. And this 15% increase that has happened already, it happened because of the food processing industry. They were ready. But why I am happy so much? There were representatives of other industries like ceramics. Our ceramic products are ready to be accepted in Europe. They are already reoriented from Russian markets to Asian and European, and there are
a whole set of such sectors that are ready already. It's easy for them, and with some cover methods, cover transposition methods, they do that, and they do this double certification. They used to do it, but they did it, but not anymore. Now they're living by European standards. It is going to be more difficult for, I'll tell you who, our engineering sector, because our engineering, unfortunately, over this recent period, all the newly gained independence period, it was in cooperation with the Russian, post-Soviet, not car building, but entities, but engineering with the sophisticated state-of-the-art mechanisms. And there they will have to reorient themselves, not just for safety purposes, but for certain accords of the European market, European electric power standards, European standards for engines, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole set, a whole list of things, and that will take time to reorient. I think they should not ignore it and sabotage it. They should instead prepare, get themselves ready, and that won't take that much time to feel comfortable in the European market, I'm convinced. I have a question to you. Taking into account that the Parliament unanimously voted for ratification of the agreement as a People's Deputy, knowing this from the inside, what do you realistically expect? Will they support next week this law? I would say the following, and that's Mr. Voropaya will he weigh more than the rest of the parliament. Former members of the Party of Regions are not that influential anymore. There are other centers of influence, but on the other hand, I saw it among MPs belonging to democratic alliances or parties. There are some lobbyists from the sectors, and they were never in a hurry to become European. Will we have 226 votes? I cannot tell you positively, because this last session is going to be very difficult in terms of its atmosphere. We'll have to adopt the anti-corruption law and as a whole, and the majority of these current Supreme Rada are not happy at all with that. And Persian illustration was difficult to push through, and now we have 10 days to release people who were there under Mr. Yanukovych, goodbye, keys, goodbye, illustration who should take place and should take place quickly. And the anti-corruption law should be adopted very quickly. I think the atmosphere is going to be very combatant, very aggressive. So we understand that on the 14th of October we have to come and help you celebrate and pray. So I think and that will help the truth win, and we shall overcome. We believe that in joint effort we shall overcome. That day, not someday. And clergy is with